Good morning, everybody. Hello, Chanel. Hello, Crone Woman Walking. Replay is coming on this one, to be sure. Welcome, welcome. We're going to talk about how to study and remember. This is part 2, actually. So if you missed part 1 in this series, link is down in the description below. And something new for you all, too, in the form of Tyranny of Your Memory over at magneticmemorymethod.com/TOM. Tyranny of your memory and how to escape it. I had an interesting experience where I saw someone hypnotize themselves into a bizarre situation that they weren't going to use the most obvious technique to use. And I'm pretty sure it was their primacy memory or the primacy effect and something called sunk cost fallacy that was holding them back. So I came up with this little mini training, and if that's for you, then please dive in and get that at magneticmemorymethod.com/TOM. It actually goes out on Friday, the 23rd of August. That's when it begins, and you'll get some exercises and whatnot to escape the tyranny of your memory and understand what sunk cost fallacy is so you don't get caught by it and trapped by it. Well, thank you so much for that. Super chat, Crone Woman Walking. Really appreciate it. And great, memorizing by candlelight. That sounds very, very exciting. Thank you again so much for that. I really, really appreciate it. All right, so got a lot of things to talk about, unpack some secrets from some books, etc. today, and really happy to see you all. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and make sure to go over to magneticmemorymethod.com/Tom. And, I guess it's coming to be the end of summer, getting back to school, which is why we want to do some topics like this, especially for the students. And so share this around if that you're able to do so, especially if you have students in your life. But we're all students. We are perpetually bound to be learning, and that learning shall never end. And that's one more reason why we need to escape the tyranny of our memory, because our memory is not only our best friend and advisor and enables us in so many ways, but it also can hold us back. And that's why I created this series that starts on August 23rd. And you won't get it if you don't go on over to magneticmemorymethod.com/Tom to register. Goat is in the house. Excellent. I love that name, Goat, the doppelganger goat. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing. And Goat says, you're looking extra thick today. I don't know what that means, but yeah, maybe I'm a little bit bigger. Let's see. Maybe we can change that a little bit. There we go. I don't know if that's less thick, but thank you. That's right. That was a little bit big, a little bit prevalent in the screen. All right. Speaking of screens and screens inside of screens, there's some interesting things going on with my new book. I'm going to revise it one more time, and it's really a tricky one, but we'll get there. But I want to say a thanks to everybody who is asking me about it. It hasn't been forgotten. It's just one that really needs a lot of finesse. And so I started to create a new course while that we were working on it. And while I was creating the new course, I created Tyranny of Your Memory. So make sure you go and get that. But there's another new course coming as well while I sort out some stuff with the new book. But the photographs of the Memory Palace are all done. And that's really, really exciting. So thanks to William Gordon for doing those images, and we're getting there. All right. So last time we were talking about the point of education, and you might be thinking, well, why would we need to know about the point of education on how to study and remember? And if you go back, and the link to that previous replay is down in the description below, you'll see that a lot of things matter when you have frames and context, and you have mental models that you can travel through that help enable you to have the largest possible field that you can get, so that when the information comes into your awareness, you're able to have a place for it to land. So you have land that has been tilled, and then you have the seeds that fall into the land, and then you're able to actually integrate things in a way that makes a lot more sense and really actually helps you. So pretty important to go through that sort of training, and that's why we have it there. Then the truth about understanding and the fact versus opinion. So if you want that, make sure you go back to watch part 1. You'll still get lots out of part 2 today. I'll also point out that this particular thing is not going to go on the blog or podcast in a polished version. It's just going to be in these live streams and quite potentially developed into a course. So stick around if you want to participate in the live version or watch the replay. So we also talked about the truth about understanding, and that's really important. If you want to understand, you have to really think about what understanding is and develop that as a skill. And then, of course, you need to develop the ability to then use understanding to help you remember, which is its own little adventure. And then we talked about fact versus opinion and how those are memory tools and how you can remember more and learn faster by distinguishing the two and then really stress testing both facts and opinions. And today, we're going to talk about alertness and focus and how we can develop it. We're going to talk about forming general associations, get into the realm of associations, making them, and we will talk about self-testing, because what's the point of making associations for memory if you're not going to self-test? You need to self-test in order to, first of all, get it into long-term memory, and you also need to do it in order to test that the things that you're actually memorizing are true, right? And truth is obviously a complex statement, word, idea, concept, but we can get there. We can get there. Monster's in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you for being here. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up, bang, 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 and let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. This is also your opportunity to ask questions if you got them and to otherwise get involved. They're a lot more fun, these sessions, when we have people joining in the chat, but I'm happy with crickets too, because sometimes I'm a cricket myself. So you follow your own bliss, as they say. All right, then as we talk about these things, we will, as usual, go on the various tangents and tandems that make live streams so much fun, as opposed to the robo-me versions of the podcast and so forth. But speaking of the podcast, if you missed last week's episode, Scott Young was on. We talked about ultra learning, which is so ultra learnable that it's actually transparent in space world here. Isn't that cool? All right. So if you haven't heard that episode, go and check it out, and check out his book, Ultra Learning. Really fantastic. And I highly recommend it. I have this concern that some people thought that maybe I didn't like the book, but actually I like it a lot. I just was in a weird way that day, so it sounded a little bit strange. But people said, hey, we liked the episode. That was awesome. I also wanted to introduce you to my friend, Mr. Death. So Mr. Death here says, it's a little bit fuzzy, but he says, catch you later. Isn't that funny? Now, I often show you the Warrior of the Mind emblem from Tony Buzan when he gave me that, but I forget to show you the other emblem that I have always beside it, which is Mr. Death reminding us that he'll catch us later. And this has a long story, because a friend of mine, whose name was Patrick Kimball, gave this to me, and he was an artist, and he created this character, Mr. Death, and he would actually wear a giant costume of Mr. Death, and he would go around in Cranbrook, and he would say, and he would dance like Fred Astaire with this giant skull on his head, and he would say, catch you later. Anyway, that's my memento mori, and I hope that you have one too. So Sebastian is here from Germany. Also, hallo, wie geht's dir? Wo genau in Deutschland? Ivica is here from Macedonia. Amazing. People from all around the world. Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for saying hello. Let me know where you are in the world if you haven't said hello yet. And hit the thumbs up. Now, why do I remember this today? Mr. Death and his message that must always be true for all who are alive. Catch you later. Well, death has been in the air since life began. And it's very important to seize the day, right? To really, really be involved, to be switched on. And this is what knowing how to study and remember will do for you. So we really want to focus on developing our ability to learn at the highest possible level and turn it into a practice, but not one where we have the traps of, scarcity, where, oh, there's not enough time, or, oh, there's too much information, and this is causing the counterproductive effects of not being able to actually use memory techniques because we want it all, because we're like Dr. Faustus and we have to have it all. We don't want to switch on our death anxiety. What we want is to be cool, be calm, relaxed, and enjoy the process, because death will catch you. And you can actually accelerate your path towards death by stressing out over the small details, or what you make as a big picture in your mind of, oh, there's not enough time, oh, there's too much to learn, and all that sort of stuff. There will always be more to learn than you can learn. There always will be that way. But we are a species that works together. We're collaborative. And so you just got to know what you need to know in order to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. And the more that you can get that, the more that you understand that, and you can find your place and your piece and your part, and be visionary about stretching that out to its maximum capacity, so to speak, and just focus on hitting the real big levers, then the more you're going to be able to contribute within your realm of competence and stretching your realm of competence and so forth. But if you get all hung up on the too much information, not enough time kind of stuff, then I just remind you, Mr. Death is always there to say, catch you later, right? And he will get you sooner if you let stress get in the way. So be a warrior of the mind and have your memento mori that reminds you that now is the time. Now is the time. And that's all there is. All right. So Sebastian is in Mönchengladbach near Dusseldorf and Köln. Oh, I haven't been there, but it sounds amazing. I hope I pronounced it half decently. I have spent some time in Köln, but not enough. What was that beer there? Kölsch, something like that. Kölsch. I like that stuff. I don't drink anymore, but man, I sure made a fool out of myself drinking a lot of that stuff. Mr. Space is in the house from Queens. All right. So you're waiting for some food. Okay, great. May as well use this place for brand new microstations. Excellent. That's a good point. If you have to be in a fast food restaurant, might as well turn it into a magnetic memory palace and with the stations and all that jazz. Excellent. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. And yeah, speaking of Mr. Space's suggestion here, yesterday I was in a restaurant and same thing. Might as well make a memory palace. You can't really see it, but there it is. Something like that. And yeah, amazing. So I got a new memory palace yesterday. Actually, I got a couple, but the one restaurant in particular, amazing. Korean barbecue. Wonderful, tasty. And if you are friends with me on Facebook, you would have seen the Korean barbecue itself. And the first thing that Christian Fitzharris posts is, wow, 8 new stations, because we had this meat and I had the onions lined up sort of like a smile there to help make it more memorable, of course. So indeed. New memory palaces. Thanks for mentioning that, Mr. Space, because that's the discipline that we got to have, is being switched on to the now. Let's get the new memory palaces going. Everything. You're in a restaurant, make a memory palace out of it. David is in the house. Good to see you, David. In Chicago. Davlavi in Montreal. Well, bonjour. Comment ça va? Good to see you. Good to see you all. Thanks for being here, and get involved in the chat while we get started. But I want to remind you all, get that Tom, magneticmemorymethod.com/Tom for how to escape the tyranny of your memory. And we'll get you out of there as soon as we can. Lickety split. All right, so let's get started with alertness and focus. So I wanted to bring out Rest here, Alex Pang, and this is a great book for some of these ideas, and there's many others in research and so forth. And one of the things that a lot of people know intuitively, but they don't necessarily experiment with and harness the power of, is which times of day they perform best when they're quote-unquote at their best, right? So what I want you to do, if you want to do these things, is get out a memory journal and start to explore what times of day that you are at your best, and really start to show up at those times and harness the power of them. But there's more, because it's not just time of day, but it's also time of week, right? So when are you at your most creative power in the flow of a week? Don't build up a fantasy that you're somehow going to, isolate a special formula and it's always going to be that way. But you might want to think about the depletion of your energy over a week and then reorganize when you do certain things, because you might be at full power at the beginning of the week, and that's because you've just taken the weekend off or whatever the case may be, and then you could strategically set up particular tasks that have a lot more heavy cognitive loading and put them there. So instead of struggling to read that heavy textbook on a Friday when you're totally capped out, what if you start to read it on a Monday? Obviously, the world is not so clean. This isn't a magic bullet, and you might not be able to do things that way every single time. But it's a strategy that a lot of people don't know about, and it's a strategy that's super powerful, and you can work with it, and you can get a lot more leverage over yourself if you know about depletion of energy, not only over a day, but over a week. And you might also think about certain effects. I don't know the extent to which they are true universally, but there are some arguments that when you're going to start a thing, you start at the beginning of the month. And then you think about your energy and the distribution of it across the month, and perhaps across a year or a quarter. You see this in the financial world, and there might be some reasons why they do it that way. Maybe there are reasons why they shouldn't do that way. I don't know. But it's something to look into and to really explore. I myself am doing it now for some particular projects that I'm developing, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to save that for that day and just experiment and see what happens, because of thinking through when is energy at its peak and when does it start to deplete, and then how can we build the game in such a way that we can't lose because we've kept these things in mind, or at least used this knowledge to help guide the structure of how we engage in the activities. So it's not gonna be the same way for everybody, but time of day, time of week, time of month, time of year, time of quarter, etc. can all be powerful tools for harnessing your alertness and your focus naturally without any techniques. This is a technique, but you don't have to, think about all kinds of weird stuff like, what time of day you have a shower and all that sort of stuff. You can just think about that natural flow and how it works out in your life. I used to do this sort of naturally with the semesters when I was in school. I would find out as soon as I could when the syllabus was going to be released, the syllabi for each and every one of my courses, and I would get all the books as soon as I could and use the energy and the time of the summer, even though I always worked jobs, to knock off as many of those books, and even when possible, the assignments before the school year started, so that I could actually just enjoy the school year doing other projects. This is the secret to how I had a small press, or shared a small press, better said, in university, wrote 3 novels, published I don't even know how many chapbooks they're called, and not just with the small press I was involved in, but with other small presses, and going and doing performance art, being an actor in student films, etc. I had time like you wouldn't believe, and it's just because I thought about the nature of time, and I strategized it, and I figured out every single possible way that I could get the information in advance to use the summer to actually knock off the year to come as much as I could before it even happened. Anybody can do this who is going to school, and probably if you were at a job that had some of these sorts of things, you could go and pick the brains of the management and so forth and say, look, I'd like to know what's coming so that I can prepare in advance and knock off some tasks, etc., etc. They'd probably think you're a genius. The instant raise, instant promotion. Someone's actually thinking about the future in our business instead of just whinging around about when their next paycheck is coming. That's how you distinguish yourself. Anyway, time. So I should probably not have time of day as the bullet there, but rather time of times. Whatever. The thing is that there's multiple layers of time, and if you want to study and remember more of what you studied and maximize all of it, put some thought into that and rearrange the tasks that you have to do. Think of the heavy lifting involved and give them some primacy according to when your energy is the highest. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat if you have any questions about that. Physico is in the house. Long time no see, my friend. Very good to see you. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and greetings right back at you. So, to me, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I've seen it play out in my life many, many times. I think about it a lot, and I have a new thing where timing is definitely going to involve maximizing energy at the beginning and finding milestones along the way where energy is going to be important because it's a huge thing. Now, location. We hear this all the time, is it well lit? Is it this, that, and the other thing? Is it noisy? And we'll talk a little bit about noise in a second. But location really, really matters. And I've always been kind of, well, a friend of mine told me, he said, you're a nomad. You're a nomad. And I didn't know what that word really meant at the time. He was referring to being a philosophical nomad, and that's how I didn't know what it meant. But I also just didn't know it practically. But I used to wander around all the time, and I still do. I do it a little bit less now, but I would not just work at one library. I would work at all the libraries, you know? So in Toronto in particular at that time, there are multiple libraries. Each borough has its own library, and I would go between them. One of the reasons why I developed the habit was because it would take too long for them to move books from this place to that place. So I'd just get on my bike and ride to wherever they were. And there's just oodles of libraries in Toronto. So rather than waiting for them to do an interlibrary loan, I'd just go and get it at the other library. And then I would end up spending some time there and reading there, memorizing there, etc., studying, writing, composing, bring the laptop, etc. It's amazing, the laptops, how big they were back then and how they even fit in backpacks. But, you know, we made it happen. And the thing that I sort of retrospectively have noticed is that there may be a memory benefit in this due to how novel locations, theoretically, I don't know this for sure, but there seems to be that norepinephrine switches on when you're in a situation of novelty. And if you keep switching your locations, then you're getting, theoretically, this kick of norepinephrine, which can aid in memory formation. It's known in some scientific studies to aid memory because it's so involved in memory, this norepinephrine chemical. And there may be more, right? So if you can find a way to study in as many different locations as possible, I think you'll probably find a similar effect. Now, you don't want to do it in such a way that it, you know, becomes counterproductive or destroys the process. But road work for me, and I still do it a little bit, but not nearly as much as I used to. But road work is very, very simple. And it works like this. Go to a cafe or to a library and work there until that you have to get up and the call of nature calls. And then you go to the next place and repeat the process. So I'd get through like 3 or 5 cafes. Most of the Magnetic Memory Method blog for the first couple of years is done through road work. Write, walk, write, walk. Most of what I've done in all kinds of study projects is read, walk, or bike ride to the next library, and so forth. And, you know, it can be that there's just 2 in a day, or it can be that it's 6 in a day, whatever the case may be. But there's something about this natural pattern. Now, one thing that I had read at a certain point was that if you walk while you're processing thoughts, they're much more likely to actually get into your memory and to integrate with other things. So this is contemplation. This is a huge part of the book Rest and the research about the necessity of walking. And I guess it could be bike riding, but, you know, he tells the story of Charles Dickens, massive amounts of walking and so forth. So this is something that I was just doing, but it bears out in the research. And if you want to read it, then get Rest, because it's incredible and it makes sense. And if you read Learning How to Learn, or you take Learning How to Learn with Barbara Oakley and Terry Sinyowski, they talk about this too, with the sort of diffuse brain and how if you let it open up a little bit, then, you know, you're going to get more consolidation, I guess would be the word for it, in terms of getting things from your short and working memory into long-term memory, because you essentially let it go. You just let yourself process. So I think a lot of students are spending hours and hours and hours sitting, and they're not doing any kind of percolation. They're not allowing it to go through the holes, so to speak, and land somewhere. They're just pressure. Or worse, they're halving it, you know? So read, app, read, Instagram, read, Facebook post, read, garbage, more internet garbage, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I got a text. I got a text from a really sexy person. Ooh, you know, and they're never actually with the text anyway, so they're de facto not spending any time learning anything, and they're just under pressure the whole time and nothing's happening. It's just in and out and just a junk digital amnesia experience. So another way to put this is stress on, stress off, wax on, wax off. It's very, very simple. Physico says, this must be a good place to live. Here, libraries are not that numerous. Also, violence doesn't favor this nomad behavior. I'm very sorry to hear that, Physico. What do I say? I wish that I could stop that. Maybe we all can find a way. And you say this resonates with me so much. Whenever I see a new idea, I feel the deep need to move my body. Great. Well, maybe you don't have to walk from library to library. Maybe you can just walk around in the library. Or maybe you can walk around your room. If it's dangerous outside, I mean, I don't want anybody to endanger themselves. But maybe you can find a way, nonetheless. What is the Latin? Solvitur ambulando. It is solved by walking. And maybe you'll come up with an idea to create peace in your land just by walking around one room. I don't know. Month says, what makes a person a genius? Month, don't take this the wrong way, but I think stopping that question, not asking that question is the start. There's no such thing as genius in the way that one thinks, and you've just got to set a more realistic goal that's based on a concrete thing that can actually be achieved. I don't think any genius who is truly a genius is going to be like, yeah, I'm a genius. Yeah, right on. Here's how I did it. That's not how it works. It's not the right question. So please tell me in as much detail as you can, 500-word essay due by the end of the week, what is a genius to you? And do you really want to be that thing that you write down? I'll bet you any money if you take me on my little challenge here and you write down everything that is a genius to you, you will not want to be the thing that you write down. Not only will you not want to be, but you probably can't be because it's not realistic. So you tell me what it takes to be a genius, and then just start at a little bit more modest level. Get rid of the idea that there ever was a genius or ever will be a genius. Understand that you are the genius you want to become. You already have everything that it takes to become what it is that you want to become. You just need to put aside any kind of fantasy construction that there is even such a thing as genius, and then build a better goal, figure out what it's going to take to get there, and then start to work. Because if there is such a thing as genius, they don't have time to sit around thinking about what genius means. So, hope that helps answer your question. But if you're a philologist or you're interested in etymology, then maybe you do have time to sit around thinking about what genius means. So you don't have to take my word for that. But consider it. And I hope that answer serves. All right. So, well, you know what? Dr. Seuss, he was a genius. Don't you think? I don't know. I don't even know what that word means. It seems like a very worldly concern. Your coffee sucks is in the house. All right. Well, good to be here. Great advice. Be present. Indeed. And to be present, you have to practice being present. And so I would then say, be present to that desire, that wish that you have to be a genius. And again, write it down. Figure out what the heck it is that you want. Why do you want it? And then who actually has it? And how do you know that they have it? And where exactly is your knowledge of them having it? And that can be a bit confusing, but I challenge you to do it anyway. Where is the knowledge of them having had this state of genius that you want? I'm going to venture a guess that the only place that knowledge is inside of you. And so whatever it is that you want is already inside of you, and you already have it, because that's all there is what you are now. And so dive in, explore. Craft the path. The path is within you. All right. That's a little bit of Giordano Bruno for you. Location, road work. I think we've covered that. Let me know if you have any questions about it. Temperature. So one of the things to riff on your coffee sucks that we don't really notice is temperature. And sometimes we're just sitting there in deep discomfort. We're not actually comfortable. We're too hot. We're too cold and something like that. So you might want to explore and experiment and take care of that. So for example, I have some kind of blood pressure issue. My hands and feet are freezing all the time, and I just don't concentrate that well unless that I take care of it. But there's this bad habit of sitting there suffering and not doing anything about it. So there's an alertness and focus that needs to be developed, and then put on some socks. I have even in Australia, worn gloves in bed because it's that cold here sometimes, believe it or not. And then I flip the pages and so on, the gloves with the fingers exposed and get it through there. But it's something to really consider and to put as a strategy. Noise, of course, is another one. So, when I was younger, I could read very, very effectively through the most incredible pounding heavy metal music or whatever I wanted to listen to. Beethoven, Seventh Symphony was great. I don't know why, I just really liked that one. But now I can't really do it anymore. So you got to think about that. Also, background noise. Some people are choosing places that they are comfortable in, they feel great in, but the noise is impeding them. Or they're choosing places that are actually too quiet for them and they don't have enough ambience. So you got to experiment with it. You got to explore. And this is another reason to engage in road work if you can, if it's safe for you, because it will help you find more places and your preferences and what works for you through comparison. If you don't compare enough, you never really quite get a sense of what is and what isn't right for you and doesn't, you got to get there. And then posture and pain. So a lot of people, they're not sitting correctly and they don't do anything with their posture. Now, I'm not suggesting you necessarily need to go and take the Alexander technique, though you might explore that. But a lot of people are against themselves. They can't concentrate and they can't focus because their bodies are against them. They're hunched over, or they've got whatever they call it now, cell phone neck, iPhone neck, and they're just in a bad place. And they don't exercise. They can't even have the proper posture because the muscles in their bodies are so weak that they don't stand up straight naturally the way that you would if you did deadlifts and pull-ups and chin-ups and push-ups and all that stuff. So take care of your body with a mind to working on your posture. It's very, very important. Because if it's not causing you pain now, it will in the future. And you can have all the memory techniques in the world, but one thing I've noticed in my own experience is that pain gets in the way of attention. And pain gets in the way of paying attention, which means that if you didn't pay attention to it, you can have all the memory techniques in the world, it's just gone because you were focused on your pain. Or some percentage of your attention was focused on pain instead of the immediate world, and that is just setting and stacking chips against you that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So take care of that and get pain out of your body. Any pain that you can get rid of it if you want to study and remember more. Study better and remember more. This is non-controversial, and yet how to exactly get people to take care of this is a mystery. But I'll just keep talking about it because that's probably the most direct solution, right? So posture and pain, get rid of pain. Rohit says, great points. Thanks, Rohit. Thanks for being here. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and let's dive into active reading. And active reading basically is going to take us into general associations because we need associations in order to remember more. We need to have strategies for associating while we read and then after we read. So in my view, active reading starts with priming. We're not going to go into priming right at the moment because we've gone into it a lot before. But let me take a moment just before we carry on to remind you to go and get this new training, How to Escape the Tyranny of Your Memory. I'll put that in the chat for you all there, and you're going to enjoy that immensely because it'll also help make sure that you're not imprisoned by anything that your procedural memory and your primacy effect and sunk cost fallacy may have trapped you in. So make sure you grab that. And active reading is really, really super important because you can't have that diffuse effect that we were talking about earlier. Peggy is in the house. Haven't seen you forever and a day, Peggy, on a live stream. So thanks for being here. Thanks for saying hello. And that is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, so active reading basically, I would say, is creating associations while you're reading, and it starts with priming, which we've talked about before, and we'll certainly talk about again, but generally it's the most important thing because we're going to create the field. We're going to create the field into which the details can fall. If we just start reading cold and we haven't created context for ourselves, then we're stacking chips against us instead of for us. But one of the things I really just want to focus on and and press upon is something in speed reading that annoys me. And that is the idea that you would suppress your sub-vocalization. No, I don't think so. Why would you do that? If you want to make associations and read actively and be able to create associations really, really quickly, you would need to develop the tools of association, so many of which involve sound, right? And if you turn down the volume and you remove the muscle memory of association that your mouth enables, not to mention other parts of your body, you're just killing yourself. And I don't get it. I do not get why they talk about reducing subvocalization. Maybe later, but why? Increase subvocalization, and I'll explain why. But you've got to develop the tools for association that subvocalization will help you with. And let's just take away this term subvocalization and let's just call it vocalization. Active reading is active vocalization at some level. So the tools that we want you to have, most mnemonists that are worth their weight in magnetic gold, they want you to have at least some alphabet list or pegs or whatever. And one book that I haven't featured enough yet, although Lynn has been on the podcast to talk about it, is Memory Craft, Lynn Kelly. So make sure you get this. This is really, really great for things like the bestiary, which I tend to just call it alphabet list. And, you got to read this book anyway, because one of the things that really comes out is the vast number of ways that you can create for yourself these lists. So you can get really quite creative. And she has these beautiful images. I would call this an alphabet list, but that's the term I would use. And there's just many strategies. And look, to be fair, one of the problems is that there's so many strategies. But they all, if you really understand this and you read enough, which you should, continue to read the tradition, is that they all converge and they have more similarities than they do differences. But it can be difficult for people to work through what those are. And the only answer is to keep reading the tradition and keep reading the new stuff and bump into different people, etc., etc. But you need an alphabet list for sure at some level. I've had one. I've gone away from it. I was speaking with Lev Goldentouch this morning. We recorded an episode finally after all these years. And, we were talking about this, and I told him, I revisited the alphabet list recently, a little bit before Memory Craft came out. I started to go around with it. I never really abandoned it, actually, because I've always used it. I just don't think of it as an alphabet list. And there's multiple lists. And if you would go in the masterclass to the exercises tab, all you'll see is that I'm trying to get you to create alphabet lists. I just don't think of them as a bestiary or an alphabet list anymore, but that's what it is. And I'm trying to get you to make multiple of them. You call them peg. There's a zillion different terms for all this sort of stuff. Really, anything that's in a memory palace is itself a peg inside of a system of pegs. And so that's why I often talk about location-based mnemonics. And then any time that the image that you create or take from your alphabet list or whatever amount of material that you have in your head to associate with that's pre-prepared, ready to go, or spontaneously generated because you've practiced spontaneous generation of your associations, then they are already pegs once that they're pegged in the great peg system of the memory palace, Pegopolis, right? So the words don't really matter that much at the end of the day. What matters is you understand what the techniques are and the strategies are so that they transcend language at some level and you just use them without thinking about it, right? Because if you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, and to help you with that, I'll remind you again, how to escape the tyranny of your memory. August 23rd, if you don't have your spot in the Magnetic Memory Method world, then you need to register for it or you will not receive this. And that's at magneticmerrymethod.com/Tom, the tyranny of your memory. Little acronym there for you. So if you're just sitting there stuck and you're like, yeah, I know about the tools, but I haven't created them, you may be trapped in the tyranny of your memory. We're going to break that down. It's going to take place over a number of days. It starts August 23rd, totally free. But it's not free because you have to do stuff. Otherwise, it's just data for later. More, blah, blah, blah. All of this blah, blah, blah is just for you to finally move, take some action, do something. And I've realized that so many people are not taking action because their memory is against them. This is the training to make that stop. It ends when you can escape the tyranny of your memory and turn so much of what the beautiful, glorious, wonderful thing memory is, turn it from a trap into paradise. So Satan thought it was better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Well, we're gonna make you the god of your memory so that you can reign and serve in the heaven of your mind. But you've got to escape the adamantine chains, if you know the reference. All right. So develop the tools. You need the alphabet list of some sort. I would say you need multiple alphabet lists for sure. You need to figure out how that works in the world of pegs, etc. And you need a major method, major system, as you please, some sort of form of encoding numbers. And you need to understand that everything is either already numerically dispersed throughout space, or you need to be able to number it as it exists in space, because these are always location-based mnemonics, one way or another, even inside your brain. Tanner is in the house. Good to see you, Tanner, in Utah. Amazing. I like Utah. I've been there. What a nice state. Glad you could catch a live stream. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And once you have the major, you turn the major into something like an alphabet list, because the major is a way that lets you associate numbers with consonants, and then you turn those consonants into words to form a 00 to 99, which then is itself a kind of alphabet list, right? So I hope you're following the plot, and I don't mean to confuse you, but it is kind of confusing until that you're in the world, which is why you need to train, and you need to have thorough training from beginning to end, and just take one training, whoever it is, go from beginning to end with that teacher, actually do what they say as completely as possible, and then go to the next one and the next one and the next one, and never stop, because this is the most beautiful tradition in the world. There's a reason why our species, some of us, are trying to preserve it, and that's because it's good for your brain, and it will help you deal with the fact that Mr. Death is always there to say, catch you later, right? So if you want to deal with that horrible anxiety of Mr. Death always on your shoulder and turn it into a pleasure, then you want to train your memory so that you enjoy everything that's in your head right now, because now is the only time. And speaking of now being the only time, oh my, I've made a mess. You need to have a Memory Palace network. You need it. So if you haven't taken the free course, make sure you do it at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, as you see on the screen now. Christopher is in the house. Good to see you, Christopher. Thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Now, we are talking about how that we don't want to subvocalize, or we don't want to suppress our subvocalization. We want to accentuate it. We want to push it forward so that it actually becomes advanced and intentional vocalization. So why? Well, so that we can get association on multiple levels of correspondence to the meaning of the text that we're studying, so that we can remember it, right? And we can learn more from it. So we've got lots of levels. These are not all the levels, but we have semantic levels that we need to deal with, which is the meaning of things. And we've got echoic, which is the auditory. And then we've got things like genre and category. So if you missed the last live stream, we talked a little bit about the importance of category and so forth. It's going to be very, very essential. Let me know if, this is not clear for you. Maybe we do some more in our How to Study and Remember series on genre and category. The great Lyotard in The Différent, he says that the reason why genre evolved is because we have this horrible fear of things being out of order, right? And so we use things like genre and category partly to just reduce our anxiety of the chaos of information. I think that he's really switched on there, and that's a very, very important point. And what we need to... was that Lyotard? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Lyotard. Anyway, the point is all of the horror movie industry relies upon the fact that we are afraid of things falling out of order. A lot of people think it's, the stabbing and the shrieking and that makes the horror movie. Actually, usually it's just that the monster made a mess in the kitchen, or that there's now this wonderful bathroom. Like Kubrick was huge on bathrooms. The bathroom is out of order because there's some blood spilled there. Is it the blood that horrifies us, or is it the fact that that clean white surface has gone out of order? And anyway, we're not here to talk about movies, even though they're a great tool for understanding how your memory works. This is something to think about, genre and category. And when we want to vocalize in order to associate better, we need to vocalize the category. We need to ask, what category does this belong to? Or what category could we give it belongingness to in order to understand it better, in order to remember it better? So one of the things that you might do is you might read Memorycraft and you might think, well, what category of memory improvement book does this belong to? Or we might read Rest and we might say, well, what category of science does this belong to? And I'm not talking about looking at the spine and seeing, oh, well, they've categorized it as psychology and business. You could memorize that. That's how they've categorized it. But you can also just come up with your own to help connect with your memory. Same thing with ultra learning. Ooh, the ghostly ultra learning. That's pretty cool, that effect. What category of accelerated learning book does this belong to? And if you do that in your own mind for yourself, yeah, it might say here, if I saw it, I think it said it would belong to business somewhere here. Harper Business. So I can take that and say, oh, well, ultra learning belongs to the business category at Harper. But I think inside of accelerated learning type books, it kind of belongs to a category that you might call technical inspirational, right? Something like that. And I just make that up because then that helps me categorize it with other things. Like, for example, some of Barbara Oakley's books like Mind Shift. So in my mind, I'm going to remember, and as I was reading it, I'm going to remember more about this because I've categorized it mentally with Mind Shift by Barbara Oakley. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a true category. Look at that. That's kind of such a cool effect. I got to make all my books have this color so they disappear in the background. But that choice of linking it together already helps me remember more of this because I can think of some of the things that Barbara Oakley talks about in Mind Shift, right? And even the fact that Mind Shift exists is now linked with this, and I remember both and their titles better. So genre and category are huge. And saying it out loud, I purposely said out loud, this is like Mind Shift. So I didn't suppress my sub-vocalization. I proclaimed it so I could hear it in my ears because there's an echoic character to memory that if you make things audible, you're able to learn and remember more. And that's how your alphabet lists can work and be developed a lot faster. It's how all your major can be learned and developed faster. It's how you can build your 00 to 99 faster. And then it's how you can use them with greater depth and integrity and speed of integration into what you're doing. So these categories you need to keep in mind. This is the basics of association, and I promise you, this is better than eidetic memory. This is beyond eidetic memory if you would just do these kinds of things. All right. Forgive me with my throat here today. Christopher is in the house. Hello, Christopher. Thanks for being here. Jeffrey Wong is here from New Jersey. Love what you do. Love that you're here, Jeffrey. Thanks for saying hello. Christopher says hello from Trinidad and Tobago. Wow, Trinidad. Amazing. Thanks for being here from Trinidad and Tobago. How is it that it's two places at once? We'll have to learn about that. Peggy says, I think it helps me improve my progress in foreign languages to read out loud, or at least to sub-vocalize the pronunciation of the words in the target language. Indeed. When I read, I always do exactly that, especially for foreign language learning. It's super important. I don't know why the speed readers talk about suppressing it. I think it's the opposite. But then again, I don't speed read. I do something else. And it's more like speed reading than it isn't. But at the end of the day, I think that's just such a terrible term for it. All right. So thanks, everybody who has been active in the chat so far. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And let's talk now about self-testing. So this is really, really important. And don't forget what we've talked about previously, because this maps onto both the previous live stream and the things that we talked about today in terms of, what we talked about. So not going to chew up through review. You can watch the replay if you need to, but always keep in mind that these are progressive and integrative and interactive unto themselves. So self-testing, why do it? Why test yourself? Well, you want to go beyond a passing knowledge in things, right? And if you just read and breeze through texts, you're just going to have a passing knowledge. And, I get dozens, hundreds of emails every week. People say, I read and then I forget. By the end of the day, it's gone. Well, Lev this morning, he shocked me a little bit by saying that sometimes he purposely reads just so that it lasts until the end of the day and lets it go. But it makes sense. So wait for that interview and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you subscribe to podcasts so you don't miss that episode with Lev, because I think you're going to find it very, very powerful. And he just has really great ways to approach things and a very successful guy. So we want to go beyond a passing knowledge of things, but why? And why is self-testing part of this? Well, part of the reason is if you're not being tested by an external source, then you should test yourself and understand that external source is yourself testing you, and you've submitted yourself to that for whatever reason. But if you just go with a passing knowledge and you haven't absorbed any of that, you don't have any permanence with any of that stuff, then it's going to create low confidence, right? Because you know that you just have a passing knowledge. You're going to want to say stuff. You're going to want to be involved in conversations. But you're going to know how weak and how limited all of that is. Or you'll have the opposite problem, which is that you'll think that your passing knowledge is sufficient to throw your gloves into a match, and then you'll get pounded. Or you won't even be able to see that you've gotten pounded, which, is okay. But I'd rather that person than the person who just keeps silent because they have low confidence in their knowledge because they know it's just passing and they never say anything. That's the saddest thing in the world. There's nothing wrong with anything when even the people who think they know more than they know and go off happy that they've said their stuff and persist in ignorance. But the thing that really is the worst is when people don't even try because they have low self-confidence and their confidence is low because they're aware of the passing knowledge. And they know, too, that their knowledge is easily toppled and they don't want to get hurt. They don't want to have anybody show them up. And that's understandable. So we want to go beyond passing knowledge, and self-testing can help. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to catch up with Christopher's chat here. You say that this reminds you of your mathematics teacher. Ever since he was a boy, any information, books, equations, etc. would just stick to his mind. He credits it to his genes. I don't know how that reminds you. I don't know how anything that we're saying reminds you of anything that would credit something to someone's genes. But read Ultra Learning by Scott Young. He was talking about the genetic problem there, and it's a bit of a fallacy. So that teacher may well have said that, but I doubt that that's the explanation. But thank you for that, and I'd love to hear more about how this led you to that conclusion. So how are we going to self-test now that we know why we need to do it? We need to go beyond a passing knowledge. Self-testing gets us there, and it helps us have higher confidence. Why? Because we've actually tested to confirm that what we know is at least has some sort of verisimilitude to the source, right? And then we don't feel like we're so easily toppled. And even if we were still insufficiently schooled and we were aware that we have passing knowledge, what's the number one tool when you engage in a conversation? Start with, I only have a passing knowledge about this, but it occurs to me, or I wonder how you think that this might connect with what you know, and then you go from there. That's called rhetoric, but it's very powerful, very powerful. All right. Christopher says, I can't type essays with this character limit. Oh, that's a shame. I didn't know they had a character limit. Well, let's see if we can get in touch with the YouTubes and the Googles and say, come on, man, this is human knowledge we're involved in here. What's with this character limit nonsense? I heard from a coder that the reason why there are character limits is for the convenience of the coders and efficiency. Woo-hoo-hoo. Man, they're going to get smacked upside the head when they find out that their efficiency has destroyed the human brain and the ability to communicate with each other. But we'll see. Hopefully I stand to be corrected on that. All right, so self-testing. How do we do this? Well, first of all, we need to find out the fundamentals, and we need to figure out what those are. So priming is a great way to do that. And when you take up a book like this, one thing you want to do to find out the fundamentals is find out what are the fundamentals that the author thinks are fundamental. So first thing I do when I got this book is I go to the index, right? And just scan through this. These are the fundamentals, and I can just quickly do it now. So Salvador Dali. Oh, well, he's a big guy. There must be something fundamental going on in there. And, why is he talking about Ebbinghaus? Herman Ebbinghaus. I know that guy. He's a memory guy. So, I'm just starting to build a little bit of map here. What are the fundamentals? What do I already know? And then I'm self-testing because I often think, where will I find those strange cats that I've just recognized from here? And what fundamental things do I already know? And what fundamental things do I not know that I might add to as I read this? So it's a bit of meta-learning, priming in that way, and it's very, very powerful. Likewise, this cover isn't showing up quite well, but it has some names on the back, one of which I already mentioned, Barbara Oakley. Well, start to have the map there. What are the fundamentals there? But you want to find out the fundamentals, and then you want to learn how to envision the outcomes. So one of the things that you want to do is, and we'll talk about this a bit more in the beginning, is just to understand what is the outcome that the author wants in the book. What is it that they want for you, right? And the index may not give you those clues, but I often like to read the conclusion first because it helps me figure all of this out. Now, different books conclude in different ways, but often I read the last page. Look, it's not a mystery novel. I don't really care if the butler did it or not because it's a book that has a different purpose. So if you find out the conclusion first, then you can envision the outcomes of what the book is trying to achieve, have that as something like a map in your head, and then when you're reading, the field in which the details fall is already bigger. And then in terms of creating inventories, you want to map out the different references that are being made there. So you can't know all the fundamentals, but you can think, well, they're making a big deal out of pointing out this person. I need to go and follow up on that. But you're only going to follow up on it if A, you can find the information that you wanted there, and B, that you can actually remember to do it. So that's where having a memory journal and charting out your plan of attack for what you're going to do after you read the book as you go along can be very, very useful. And then there's different forms of highlighting. So if you go to magneticmerrymethod.com or Google and type magnetic Merry Method and accelerated learning techniques, you'll see some strategies that I've got for you all about how to use highlighting in a particular way, or what I call the marginalia dot. That's all there for you. So check that out. And that's part of the way to create inventories quickly and then follow up on them with a plan. And that is super powerful. And it is a form of self-testing in the sense that you're going to actually test the book as you go through it, test your knowledge, test the fundamentals, and then test the follow-up as you go through it again and again and again. Now, I mentioned expectations, and you want to set up expectations when reading. You want to have an expectation. Now, often that's imposed upon you, but you can impose it upon yourself. So one thing I like to do is when I pick up a book, how many things do I want to remember from this book? What do I want to remember from it? I just say, well, 3 per chapter, 5 per chapter, 1 per book, 3 points per book, etc. Set up an expectation and then find out what the author, or if it's a course, what the professor expects of you, and then be active about understanding the expectations that you have for yourself, that the author has for you in the book, and whatever the professor has for you in the course, and perhaps what the world has for you as well, if you're the kind of person who has read the book or took the course. And be active about meeting that expectation or that hierarchy of expectations and understand it. This helps you remember so much more, because every time you're lost and you think, well, what am I supposed to do and how am I supposed to integrate this knowledge, you can go back to the set of expectations. You don't have to wonder, you don't have to guess, you don't have to hope, you don't have to pray. You have an internal index of expectations and the vision that you created for yourself to help you follow through, which is very good. All right. Christopher says, to continue, I could see that when he recalls distant things like Julius Caesar, he focuses and closes his eyes. Then he goes to his old school, his class, and reads the book like he remembers it. He can quote most books he has read. He's a man of terrifying focus, actually. Well, I'd like to meet a man of terrifying focus. So very good. Ask him if he uses memory techniques, and if so, let's have a chat about it on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, so how do you self-test? Well, there's a number of ways to do it. One thing that a lot of people probably do naturally, but maybe don't do enough strategically, is when you come across something and you want to memorize it in your memory palace, create your imagery, and then close your eyes. Close the book and actually rebuild it in your brain. This is really important. Regularly close that book to review, not to check Instagram, not to check email, not to see how many likes you got on, whatever, on Facebook. Close it and reconstruct. Use the memory tools that we talked about. And then, as you recall all of that stuff, also close the book and practice drawing conclusions. You know now what the author expects as the outcome. You know maybe what the course that you're reading the book for expects as the outcome. You know what the world expects of you as a highly competent, contributing member of society expects of you. Draw conclusions on all those levels. Close the book and think and conceptualize. Likewise, in a course, instead of during the break from lecture period, checking all this retarded social media stuff, go and get a drink and reflect. Chat with some other people. Find people who want to continue the conversation with the course. Yes, there's something to be done, or there's something to be said for taking breaks, but by the same token, if your break is just like, okay, let's see what's on Instagram, you're maybe shooting yourself in the foot. Now, as you read or as you study, you'll often come across these statements that people have in their text, which is, it is evident that. And the thing that you should always ask is, what is evident exactly? This is a great strategy for studying and remembering more. What is exactly evident? Or they say, it is clear that. What exactly is clear? Right? You just stop yourself. Close the book. He just said it's clear that. Well, what is clear? Or it's evident that. Well, what is evident? And see if you can figure it out, piece it out, drawing upon what you've memorized so far, what you've understood so far, and then go further. So, why is it evident? Why is it clear? How is it clear? When is the stuff clear, right? In what historical context? Where? Which geographical context? To whom exactly and to whose benefit exactly does it matter that this is evident? You can almost have like a kaleidoscope in your head where you just tick through these questions and don't stop until that you've gone through the list. You're going to remember so much more, even without memory techniques, because you are rolling through this. And it's just super, super powerful technique. I should have maybe gotten a specific example to show you what I mean, but I think you get what I mean. It's not that difficult. But just as an example. So aerobic activity is beneficial in several ways, and he goes on to talk about this, and he has these sorts of examples, and he goes on and on and on all about it. And, other researchers have tracked the health and behavior of tens of thousands of nurses, British civil servants, and so forth. And many of these studies have demonstrated that staying physically active in your 40s and 50s pays off for decades. Okay, so we're going to stop and we're going to say, so this has been demonstrated. So who was it that demonstrated it? How did they demonstrate it? What exactly was it that they were hoping to demonstrate it? Where did it take place? With whom? And who does the conclusion serve? Okay, so that's an example. It's a little bit of a different wording, but it's another example. So not just, it is clear that, or it is evident that, but it's been demonstrated. You just stop right there. Who had demonstrated it? Why did they demonstrate it? What did they demonstrate it? And to whom is that beneficial? All right? And then grade yourself with goals, right? Make goals. You're going to ask this question 5 times per chapter, and you're going to make a little essay answering all those questions. And if you get it right, tick, 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 give yourself a star. However you reward yourself. Maybe you reward yourself, just make it healthy. Take a break, take a walk without anything, and enjoy. But this is a very powerful strategy. Probably one of the most powerful strategies that there is. And if you do this in writing, you're going to be able to filter and sift and see more about what the real things are that you ought to be memorizing from the text, instead of, as we talked about in the beginning, getting overwhelmed by the fact that there's always more information than you can learn. There's always this massive abundance of information, and yet you have strategies and an abundance of strategies that you can just use to help you generate more knowledge out of the text, and then actually find within that pool of knowledge the stuff that's actually memorizable and worthy of memorizing. It's very, very powerful. And when you test in a journal where you keep your memory palaces, and develop your tools inside of there. So, this is a typical memory palace here. Oh, I'm mirrored. And you can't really see it, sorry, on there, but probably on the blog eventually I'll have a shot of this. And I just start to develop a tool. I have this guy and he's helping me with all this stuff. And it's like very, very powerful. The memory palace is there, the words that are memorized. And then I can't really see pictures in my mind. So this doctor, I'm going to just draw him out. Don't worry about visualizing it. Bang, then we're done. The stuff is memorized. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So I really, really hope that you'll get a journal, start doing this in paper. It doesn't necessarily strictly have to be on paper. I like to also have memory palaces on index cards from time to time. It really just depends on what the actual learning is, and lots of ways to do that. All right. Then, along those lines, you can have mixed media tool development as well. So every phone has a camera now. You can film yourself talking through the tools that you've developed and how you've used them to memorize. You can get the audio. You can use all kinds of these sort of softwares that give you PowerPoints or keynotes or whatever, and display all your stuff there. Many tools to explore and use mixed media. But don't abandon the memory journal by hand. This is probably the most powerful tool, and it helps you plan all of those other tools. So very, very important. And above all, never stop exploring. Never stop exploring. It's not like you're going to hit the tool and be just like, bam, that's the one. And that's going to serve forever. Strategies, tools, they burn out, they wear out. You need novelty. Earlier we were talking about different locations and norepinephrine. That's just really, the need for novelty is so strong in so many brains. So you got to keep adding. You got to keep exploring and filling that field, nurturing that field, fertilizing the field. Gary Weber has a very, very important point in Happiness Beyond Thought as well that I would add here, which is this: you can't emulate the teacher. You can't be the teacher. So you got to understand the knowledge in the teacher. And in order to do that, you need to explore it for yourself without hoping to reproduce what anybody else has done, which is why you need your own vision for yourself. And that's why you need to create all of this for yourself, because it's never going to be that you can be anybody else. You're just you. And that's the most amazing thing. Wonderful, wonderful thing. So hope that helps you out. This is part 2. We'll continue on next time. I imagine we're going to talk about the use and dangers of generalization. We're going to talk about strategic reading, and we're going to talk about dealing with discouragement, both internally and externally, which never goes away and will always come. And so that has been today's session. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll stick around for a minute, and if not, then we will call it a day. But I always enjoy hanging out with you all. Thanks for everybody who is active in the chat today, and really wonderful. And I'd love to hear more about Christopher's teacher there. And before we go, I'll remind you about how to escape the tyranny of your memory. Get that at magneticmemorymethod.com/Tom. Nothing is coming immediately. The first is launched on August 23rd at some point during the day. And it's very good to have additional training if you need it. And there it is for you. So if you want to escape the tyranny of your memory, that training series is coming for you. All right. So Rohit says, thank you very much. Well, thank you, Rohit. Really appreciated seeing you here today. If you missed out on any of these books, Happiness Beyond Thought, read it. Rest, read it. Memory Craft, read it. Ultra Learning, read it. What else we got around here? Oh, we got all kinds of stuff. As we're waiting to see if there are any questions or comments whatsoever. Speaking of book recommendations, I heard from someone who I really admire and respect and appreciate hearing from about, not mentioning the name Jordan Peterson on my podcasts anymore because of some bizarre association that he may have with this or that group. I appreciate that, but I don't think that any of that will pan out, and we can't go in fear of the people who are in fear. Anybody with two nuts rolling around in their head who actually will pick up a book and read it knows that there's no danger in this. In fact, it's trying to be the antidote to those dangers. And in any case, you shouldn't criticize books that you haven't read. Not that this person was criticizing the books, but very, very strange. And we can't allow ourselves to live in this culture of just tearing people down because we may not agree with what they're saying, and all the more so when we haven't actually read anything. So I was at the Jordan Peterson meeting yesterday that happens in Brisbane, and this is not a criticism of anyone, but so many people haven't actually read Maps of Meaning. And so how you could, you can understand the other things, the other book, the 10,000,000,005 interviews that he's done and all the talks and so forth. But you really have no business, criticizing a lot of things if you haven't read the books from beginning to end. And you need to understand that all of those explications that he's saying and the seeming contradictions, and here you said that, and here you said this, and so forth, partly are coming from the deep study that it takes to produce a book like Maps of Meaning, many, many years. And from what I understood, it was painstakingly written over many, many years. And then the next book, it's not going to rebuild the whole book, but yet it still is rebuilding the whole book. And if you don't have one, you don't fully understand the other. You don't have the field for one to fall into. And it's a bit disconcerting because nobody can ever consume it all. And yet there seems to be an abundance of people who are willing to criticize it as if they had. It's very strange, very, very strange. And, Jacques Lacan, he was a psychoanalyst, and he talked about the problem of truth in explaining anything. And the specific example that comes to mind is there was a patient who was trying to explain the conditions of an affair, and the fantasy of having an affair himself was the source of his horrible fear that his wife would cheat on him and so forth. And Lacan is trying to get the truth of the real matter, what's really bothering him, out of the guy. And he realized that there are too many words. There's too many words for anybody to say the truth of what it is that they're trying to express. And so when we talk about, as we did earlier today, this overwhelm of information that we're dealing with, one of the great things that comes out of that particular teaching, especially in Maps of Meaning, is it gives us tools for dealing with that overwhelm and that uncertainty, and just buckling down and recognizing that there ain't no certainty coming. It's never coming. But you have a competence already inside of you that you can build on, that you can develop on. But if you get bowled over by someone's opinion that, he's associated with this or that, and you don't follow through, and you haven't even read it for yourself, then you may be doing more damage and scaremongering than you are aware of. And yet I still appreciate hearing from people warning me against what I might talk about or what I might say. But I think at the end of the day is if we're not talking about things and we're not saying what we're following or what we're interested in, despite fear mongering from fools, essentially, then we're going to lose, and there will be no way to win back. We will be in trouble. We will be in some dark territory. And if anything can save us, it's going to be learning better, remembering more, and preserving the memory tradition. Because technological tyranny is coming, and it's in many ways already here when it's not safe to talk in the presence of robots who can shut you down. And this is not a good thing. So, I don't know, it just comes to mind. It's on my mind. And it's a bit horrifying in its way, but we need to put the brakes on this and stop deleting and canceling things that is outside of one's preference, because the next thing that will happen is your preferences will be deleted too. And there's a old poem that says, "Don't you laugh as the hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die." And so I would say that Mr. Death is always here, and he's always saying, "Catch you later. Catch you later." But he may have you now already, and you can't go in fear. Very dry and very long, but absolutely educational. Yeah, I don't know if they're dry or long, and I don't care. I don't think that the learner's preferences have anything to do with the value of the knowledge. Dry and long is in the eye of the beholders, and what used to be just a normal length of time, now people brag about their preference for 5-minute videos. Give your head a shake if that's you. You ain't learning nothing in 5 minutes, and it's never going to happen, even if Neuralink helps you out there, because I don't think that will be any help at all. And if it's dry, well, there are things that are worth learning that are dry, whatever that means. The reality is that you are the one who changes in order to absorb, regardless of the status of the information. Status of the information is not the marker by which we judge accomplishment in the world. What we judge by accomplishment in the world is what you do with what's there, the resources that exist. And if you are going to poo-poo this or that presentation and, oh, I couldn't watch that because it was an hour, or, oh my God, it was 3 hours or whatever, give your head a shake. You're going to spend a hell of a lot more than 3 hours on something if you ever want to even scratch the surface of quote-unquote mastery. Now, that said, you certainly can reduce the amount of hours that you have to spend on things, and we talked about some of the ways that you can do that today. But that doesn't mean that you're actually going to reduce the hours that you spend. If anything, you're going to increase it because you're now so switched on to the fundamentals that you're constantly going through and reestablishing and nurturing the connections that you've made. And you will have learned, hopefully, if you learned anything at all, to be modest about what you think you know, because you don't actually know what you don't know, and you're looking for clues now to find out what you know. So if you can't get through an hour, you're going to be cursed in the most beautiful way to spend dozens and hundreds and thousands of hours if you ever actually get switched on to what a topic is really about, because there is no end to mastery. Mastery is marked by the person who continues to practice even though they have the skill. They continue to learn, they continue to nurture, they continue to fertilize even though they have the skill. Because they know not only that the skill will fade like that if they don't practice it, but that they don't know what they don't know about the skill. That's the mark of the master. Peggy says, it's very easy to both misunderstand, or to be misunderstood and to misunderstand. The important thing is to think about what and why you agree or disagree with. Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem. People aren't going through, as we did in our slides. Oh, he said that this is demonstrated. Well, who demonstrated it? Why did they demonstrate it? What was it that was demonstrated? Where exactly in the world was this happening? And you'll notice that scientists like Peterson, they'll say, though, this was in Sweden or this was here. And they're pretty careful about giving you the context. Instantly, an individual who has any modicum of intelligence will say, well, they're not generalizing about the whole world here, but they may be trying to find things that could be generalized. And as a scientist, they're open to new knowledge and so forth as it comes. But this is what we've got now. This seems to be a great indicator. Can it be a great indicator? I don't know. Let's figure it out and so forth. And they're open to being corrected. And not only that, they welcome it and they want it. But then there are people who are not actually correcting them. They're just coming with the hammers of ignorance. Well, there is a way to destroy your own ignorance, and it's continual study. It's continually equipping yourself with the tools that work, and I want to help you escape the tyranny of your own memory that is holding you in ignorance, and that's why we're having this special training go out on August 23rd. You will miss it if you don't go to magneticmemory-method.com/Tom, so make sure that you do that. TOM is a handy little acronym for you. Tyranny of memory. And I'll help you escape that. So all of which is to say, I really appreciate people sending out these warnings, but, continue to do so. But understand that you might need to do a little bit more research about what's really going on if someone has you thinking that anything is awry in the way that some people are saying it is, because that just doesn't stand to reason, as far as I can tell. But I would like to see some more evidence along those lines, if that it exists. But if it's just so and so said on this or that website, I mean, I'm not sure that's going to do the trick. So we need to be really careful out there, and we need to understand that a lot of what you see online and on the internet is purchased by people who do not have your best interest in mind. And it's not as easy as calling it quote unquote fake, reporting or whatever. There's even much more sinister things than that. So, it's even a risk these days to say as much as we've said, but I think it's important to take that risk and understand that our best weapon, our best path forward is to work on our memory, to work on our critical thinking skills, to work on our powers of discernment, and to actually work on reading the books that people are talking about but obviously haven't read as much as we can, and to read them efficiently, to read them effectively, and to read them in a way that we actually remember what the heck was said in there, so that we have some verisimilitude between what's in our heads and what's actually in the book. Because the problem with books is that they're not where the information is. The information is never in books. The information is in your head and in the discussion that you have with other people. And then you have that book to look back at the record and to see how much integrity what you think it said has with what you remember, what is actually said there. And yes, there are matters of interpretation, but never get trapped in relativism and, it's just your interpretation and that's fine because there are as many interpretations as there are people to have interpretations. In the most pathetic level of reality, that might be true. But if you read P.D. Jules on the role of interpretation in assessing information, he's very good at explaining, yeah, maybe, but here's the problem. Here is the problem. All of that infinity, that exponential, unending amount of potential interpretations tends to fall into categories. And those categories have likes unto themselves that really means that you're going to get 3 or 4 categories and not really much beyond that. This is set theory in math to some extent, and it works in terms of how many ways you could interpret any given text. So yes, there might be groups out there that are interpreting things in ways that are wildly divergent from the reality of what the text says, but they may not even be a decent interpretation because they're not actually reading it. But even if they were, it's probably not that it's because there's an infinity of interpretations, but rather they're falling into a possible category, a set of categories of possible interpretations, which, can be right or wrong. But there's not an infinite number of these categories. There's just a potentially infinite number, supposing there ever were an infinite number of people that will categorize or even self-categorize or can be categorized. So the example Jules gives, if memory serves, is sense and sensibility. And he says, imagine that there were 1 million interpretations of sense and sensibility, or reviews of sense and sensibility. Would they all be unique unto themselves? Absolutely not. They would fall into categories. There are only so many interpretations that are going to be possible before they start to show more similarity than difference. And this is a horrible thing that people have a hard time understanding. They think they're so unique. They think they're so special. But the reality is you can be unique and completely lacking in uniqueness. You are you. You're having the experience you're having, but that doesn't mean that it's very different from anything else. You're having a kind of experience that will fall into a category that's very like what other people are having. And that's, for many people whose ego is too big, they just find that horrifying, to think that they're not so special, right? And the book that you want to read is something called You Are Not So Smart, which goes into this in great detail, how that we trick ourselves into thinking our experience is way more unique than it is. And if you can just start to recognize that, you can be free from so much suffering. You can be free from so much pain, from so many cognitive biases, so many errors that make you legitimately look stupid because you're trapped inside of this. It's not your fault. Don't feel bad about it, but you can get out of it. You can get out of it much quicker than you think and go on to be a much higher and better person. So there's another resource for you that I highly recommend. And I often don't like to use that title because it sounds like I'm saying to you, you are not so smart. But that's what the book is called. And it's right. You are not so smart. Neither am I. And that's why I'm so glad I read that book, because it helped me understand that that's a good thing. And we can even be better and not strive to be so smart all the time, and actually use the tool of our own ignorance to help make some moves that actually get us somewhere. Maybe. There's nowhere to get if you're actually living in the now, which is hopefully where you get. And that book can also help you with that as well. It certainly helped me. So the click says, is the mind map a great technique to study a particular topic or subject? I am confused. Thank you for that question, the click. Let's get to that in a second. We'll catch up with Christopher. Trinidad and Tobago are 2 separate islands, but 1 country. I live on the bigger one, Trinidad. Amazing. Okay, I didn't know that. Now I do. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. We are at the end of the presentation, but I'm going to answer the clicks question, which means there's time for you to pop in any questions or comments that you have. Let's talk about mind mapping for a little bit. We happen to have a handy mind map right here. Whoa, isn't that great? Where preparation meets opportunity, there is no ceiling. All right, so the question is a mind map a great technique to study a particular topic or subject? Well, it depends what we mean by study. Do you mean because you want the mind map to help you remember more? Or do you mean that you want it to help you understand more? Or do you want both out of it? Or what's the deal? I need to know a little bit more about what your question is. Kota says how to remember the mind map. All right, so now we're getting into some great question territory. Here's what I suggest. Let's take a break, and then we'll talk about mind mapping. And lo and behold, we have a beautiful mind map right here. But I'll be at my best if I take a quick pause for you know what. And when I come back, we'll talk about mind mapping. So stick around. If you got a jet, no problemo. Make sure you go to magneticmemorymethod.com/Tom so I can show you how to escape the tyranny of your memory, or at least nudge you in that direction. I will be back very, very soon, and I will type that on the screen. I will be back in just a minute to dive deep into these questions about mind mapping. Bam! So that's going to go up there into the chat on the screen. If you have to leave, well, thank you for being here today. And if you can stick around, awesome, awesome. I'll be back in just a second.
Hey everybody, so I'm here in the Atlanta airport. I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for what Anthony did for me. I do seminars all across the country, usually have about 100 to 300 people every single weekend, and one of my biggest goals was to be able to memorize their names, and started studying some stuff and learning, and it wasn't connecting as fast as it needed to, and I just wasn't connecting the dots, and started doing some research online, and there I found Anthony. And Anthony, I just want to tell you thank you very much for all that you've done. Now, man, my memorization is through the roof. I've almost reached my goal of getting 300 people at one time. I'm not exactly there yet. I'm off just by a few, but I'll get there as I keep practicing and keep connecting what I've learned from you and what you've put and you've helped me with. And so I just want to tell everybody, if you're looking to take your memory palaces and your memory techniques to the next level, I mean, Anthony's the guy. If he can help me go from not even remembering people's names, and that's the biggest issue of my life in my seminars, to actually being able to memorize over 100 and something people's names, close to 200, man, he can help any of you guys out with anything. So I just want to give a shout out to Anthony. Very thankful, very grateful for meeting you. Very thankful for the fact that as soon as I sent you an email, you responded very quickly, very promptly. You just opened up your time and gave me a scheduled time very quickly also. And the support afterwards was well above and beyond. I mean, you could have ended it right there, but he didn't. He kept emailing me and make sure I was okay, and would send me emails periodically to make sure that I was following up and following through. So again, just want to thank you very much, Anthony. As I'm walking through this airport, getting ready to jump on a plane to Seattle, I was just thinking about how grateful and thankful I am for you being in my life and for helping me take those steps to the next level. And if anyone is out there is ever thinking about, should I work with Anthony, the answer is absolutely, unequivocally yes, beyond the shadow of a doubt. I could probably keep going on and on. But again, thank you, Anthony. And I really appreciate you. You've been a blessing in my life.
All right, thank you for that little pause. Mind Map Mastery is the book, really, that's going to answer the question, but let's dive into it a little bit. So the questions were, if I recall and can just look at our thing here, is the mind map a great technique to study a particular topic or subject, and how to remember the mind map? So those questions were great from Kota and the Click. Let's dive into it. And fortunately, we have a mind map right here with us now to refer to. So this is good. And there's a powerful way I will share with you about how to use a mind map to remember. So if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Yes, I will keep repeating that. And maybe I'll one day get as fast as the Flash. Say it really fast. All right. So mind mapping. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing. I was talking with a friend, and he said, mind mapping, I never got it. I never quite understood it. And I said, well, did you ever do it? Did you ever practice it? Did you ever submit yourself to the laws of mind mapping that Tony Buzan talks about? And the answer was, nope. And so that's the answer why it didn't really work or why I didn't get into it. Now, there's no big deal if nobody does it, but you can't really know a thing until you practice it. So I would suggest that the first thing that you do, if you want a real answer to the question, is mind map a great technique and how to remember a mind map, just make the commitment, I'm going to spend the next 3 months mind mapping like crazy. And I've done a disservice here. Hold on, because I can't mention mind map mastery without mentioning 101 top tips for better mind maps by Phil Chambers. So I think in my mind, these things go together. And of course, unfortunately, Tony has gone to the Great Memory Palace in the sky, and you can't learn mind mapping directly from him, but I was able to. And so that obviously is in my head. And so I have a bit of an advantage there. But all those things said, you want to actually just decide to do it and do it for 90 days. Because when I started to do it seriously and get into it, then I started to understand it, because I couldn't conceptualize it. I couldn't understand why that you would do this and why would you do that way. And it's not necessarily that some words are going to come and be like, oh, that makes sense. Now I'll do it. No, you do it and then it works. And you do it in accordance with the 10 laws, and they're all covered here. So that's the first thing I would say. And you could read the 10 laws until you're blue in the face. You can memorize them forwards and backwards. That's still not going to be the same as actually doing some mind mapping. So if you really want the answer, go and do it. And so that's the first part, that we have to cover that. And I have to insist upon it because it's true. And whatever's stopping you, just figure it out and stop it from stopping you. And I would call our attention again back to Happiness Beyond Thought, where Gary Weber makes it very, very clear that you cannot emulate the path of the teacher. So don't even try to make it work out like it worked out for anybody else. Just figure out what it is you want to do. Maybe use mind mapping to help you figure out what you want to do, and then explore it so that your brain can actually go through the changes. You can develop the skills. There's some muscle skills involved in here and so on. But don't expect that anything that anybody says is going to give you the answer to the question. You ultimately need to actually put it into action for yourself. And then you need to understand the sort of the redundancy that's needed through progressive and consistent practice over a longer period of time for anything to ever become aware inside of your awareness. Because otherwise you'll just be like, yeah, this is dumb, and you give it up, which I did myself, unfortunately. And I wish that I hadn't, because I probably would have had, a way better PhD, for example, or a dissertation, better said, which wasn't mind mapped at all. Although the solution that I came up with for producing it was kind of like a mind map in its way. Anyway, I don't know what would happen, and it doesn't matter. I still did well, but whatever. It would have been cool to actually have not dismissed mind mapping and knew how to do it sooner. Whoa! So my lighting just changed. So, whoa, that kind of that wakes you up, doesn't it? That can just stay as it is, but it's gonna make this blob on my head. Shall we carry on? Let me know in the chat if you think we should carry on, or should I pause again and fix that? I don't think it's going to start a fire, so we'll just leave it. I must have gotten too excited there and knocked my desk off a little bit. Things break. Okay, actually, you know what? I better just shut those lights off, just in case. All right, sorry about that. I'm just going to have a little bit of a frosty head, but I don't imagine that many people watch these replays this deep into the end. And even if they did, we don't even need all those extra lights anyway. Yeah, we do, because otherwise we get that. I turn into T1000 and start my metallic structure starts to show through. All right, well, we don't have any ego anyway, or we're trying to get rid of it, so it doesn't matter. Notice how that happened right after Crone Woman Walking's power came back on. Boom! It was superpower, Crone Woman Walking. Amazing. All right, so all of that is to say that you've got to actually do it for yourself, and you've got to do it consistently for long enough for it to actually do anything for you. So when Kota says, my friend studied a whole year and you want to study it within a month, well, some of the tools and skills that you would need to develop in order to make that happen will likely take more than a month of practice in order for that to work for you. So when you want to do something in a year inside of a month, you got to make sure that you have the strategy and the tools. And I'll make yet another shout out to Ultra Learning, because it's got some tips on that for you. So make sure you read it if you haven't read it already. All right. Okay. So now to the question exactly about, is it a great technique to study a particular topic or subject? Yes, I think it is a great technique to aid your study, but there's different ways to use it to aid your study. So one way would be to process what you've remembered, I think. And so let's say that you've done some of the things that we talked about today. You've got a number of points that you want to memorize from a text. Then what you would do is place them on a mind map with a central image, right? So the center image is here. And then you're going to start to do tributary streams out from the center. And you're going to use imagery and keywords to help you process what it is that you understood and get those details out onto the page. So that's very, very powerful. And there's lots to understand about what's going on here. Is this mind mapping exactly following the 10 rules from Tony Buzan? No, not exactly, but it's much closer than I used to do. And it gets better and better and better. And you develop your own rules. You develop your own things. But one of the things that you can do is have the different points point at each other. Now, in this case, this is not the most perfect mind map because to discuss something like learning and studying, because this is a mind map for producing new things. It's a productive mind map. But by the same token, this mind maps will always be productive because they're helping you produce what it was that you remembered in a visual schematic that confirms what you know and helps you generate more about what you know and see patterns within them. So you'll notice I have a lot of arrows inside of here. Well, that's emerging because I've seen patterns within the knowledge and can see how to connect them better in a very organic and flow-centered kind of way. And speaking of flow, what ends up happening is that you're able to enter a state of flow when you're mind mapping because you're getting more of your body involved. And one of the recommendations that I think is so huge, I don't know why that it seems to have worked so well for me. I resisted it because it just sounded like, yeah, right, buddy. But it seems to be true, is that your central image should have 3 colors in it. And so this is pretty interesting. So try to do that. And then the way I do it is I like to make every one of my tributaries a different color. Now, sometimes that color will repeat. There'll be more than one of that color, but that's quite helpful. And one of the reasons why I think it's helpful is because you're just giving yourself, we talked earlier today about that stress and release. Focus on, focus off. Wax on, wax off. When you stop and you pause, I got to change my color, you're just allowing for some diffuse thinking to take place, even if it's just a very short period of time. I think that's probably part of what's going on there. You may also be getting a bit of novelty effect in there, maybe some norepinephrine, I don't know, all speculation. If anybody out there is rich and wants to donate for some brain studies, let's get together and give some scientists some money to run the machines and scan the brains and all that stuff. I don't know if you can scan inside of an MRI machine, but while you're mind mapping, but hey, why not? Maybe we can figure it out. Maybe we can build a new one if we got enough funding. The new mind mapping MRI machine. I like that. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And now to the question. And if you have questions, please pop them in now while we're rocking and rolling. And if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, how you're doing, what's going on, and what's exciting you lately. Love to know what's new and exciting in your world today in the chat. Can a memory palace help you remember? Yes, absolutely. And what I suggest that you do is you use the major and you have what it is you want to memorize and limit it to 12 pieces of information. And then you have your central image like this. You have your central image that is helping you express whatever the heck it is that you want to memorize 12 points about. And then on your first point, 12 o'clock, you use your major image or your 00 to 99 image, which for me is tin tin, at 12 o'clock. And then at 1 o'clock, you have your next piece of information and you use whatever you have there for 1300, I would use, right? And so that is the Hoover Dam with J. Edgar Hoover and a Hoover vacuum. And then you would go to 2 o'clock and use your image there. So I won't go through all the images, but that one would be 1400. So because it's 14, it would be the Michelin Man with his tires. And if you know the major, you know why that these images make sense, and so on. So then 1500, 1600, and so on. Now, it's not quite exactly like a memory palace, but it is exactly like a memory palace because it's location-based mnemonics, right? Where is the location? This piece of paper at 12 o'clock, as opposed to, 2200 hours, which would be over here somewhere, depending on how you set it up. So I wouldn't use this for anything more than 12 pieces of information, but you might find ways to, for example, have clocks within clocks. So this might give you space for maybe not another 12, but maybe 3. And so you could work in quarters, right? There's so many things you can do, but you're only going to do them if you actually take these ideas and exercise them, practice them enough to the point that you actually figure out whether that's a worthy technique. Endless amounts of techniques that you could come up with, and there's just really, really no end to what is possible. All right, so Adam is here from Bathurst. All right, also in Australia. I'm up here in Brisbane with my head opening up with weird metal. I don't know, something maybe happened with our chat, but Adam's chat is not showing up on the screen. Not sure what's going on. But I thank you for being here, and I saw it on the YouTube chat. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. The click says, have you made a video on Mind Palace technique? Or, hey, you made a video on Mind Palace technique, which was great. I'm still getting confused while using it or making a Mind Palace. Well, if you're getting confused, that means that you probably haven't made enough and you're not practicing enough. So make sure you take the free course and complete your first Memory Palace network and then use that Memory Palace network. There's very few things about this that anybody can understand in advance. I didn't understand it in advance. I just needed to go and do the stuff instead of thinking about it all the time. And if I have any virtue in it at all, it's that I have the fault of not trying to understand things before that I just dive in and do them. That, I believe, is the secret. There's a lot of people who are trapped in the tyranny of their memory because they're particular kinds of learners who need to understand all the details. They want to know why it works. They want to know how it works. They want to know what's involved. They want to know all the action steps in advance before they actually do anything. That's not the way reality works in most cases, and it sure as heck ain't the way it works when it comes to memory palaces. If you want to know how the memory palaces work, you take a training from beginning to end, and you create that memory palace network, and you start to memorize stuff inside of the memory palace network, and you don't get fussy about every single last detail because I've given you the most pertinent sorts of things that you need. Lev, like I said earlier, we were talking this morning, and he was like, yeah. I said, how do you do the memory palace? He said, I took your course, and I do it the way you said. That's not exactly what he said, but he was like, I do it pretty much the same way that you do, and that's probably because I took your course. So, you don't overthink it. The whole point of the course is how that I got myself to not overthink this stuff, and I was overthinking it, so I thought, what are some rules that I could put in place so that I'm not getting confused? because I'm thinking about it too much. I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, and and I started to get involved in what I sometimes think of as speculative or conceptual mnemonics. Oh, like I just showed you. Actually, you could have a clock inside of the clock of the mind map. Oh, and you could have a clock inside of that clock. Well, yeah, you could do that, but is that useful? You just end up going off in fantasy land in conceptual mnemonics for the rest of your life instead of actually doing anything with the techniques. So, the click. If you're confused, then tell me, have you completed that course from beginning to end? Have you gone through all 4 videos? Have you completed the actual training there? Did you build the Memory Palace network? Did you use it? If not, that's where you go and you do it tickety lickety split, like, tickety boo, get it done. And now you're saying, can you increase my IQ? Let's answer let's get an answer to the first question first. Worry about your IQ after you've actually completed a course from beginning to end. That's that's the thing that you need to do. IQ is a number that some guys came up with based on a test. So if you think that IQ exists, then you need to think where it exists, to whom that it's important that it exists, and what its existence is going to do. Is it going to do something for you? Is it going to do something for the people who created the test, right? In what world and in what realm does it matter that anybody has an IQ? Go to magneticmarymethod.com/YT. That's where you can get it and complete that course from beginning to end. Make sure that you actually complete a course in memory training. It's very, very important. You will lock yourself outside of what you're trying to get if you don't complete courses from beginning to end. And there's a video on YouTube, how to complete a memory course. Make sure you understand that. Watch that video. It'll help you. It's just sad in the nth degree that so many people do not finish what they begin. And you know why that they don't? I don't know all the reasons why, but it's very clear to me that it's the tyranny of your memory. So we're trying to use our memory to accomplish goals, to learn more faster, to remember more. And that's why I put together the tyranny of your memory, how to escape the tyranny of your memory. Make sure you're registered for it at magneticmarymethod.com/Tom. Tyranny of memory. We will get you out of there. If you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs and you haven't completed a course from beginning to end, it is possibly because you're locked in the tyranny of your memory, and you can get out of that tyranny. And this course goes live. It's free on August 23rd, but you ain't getting it if you don't have your seat registered for the training. It's very, very simple, and you will be there. Getting it? Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All you got to do is read and take action. Oh, man. Does it get any easier than that? Let's consider. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It really doesn't. It's so easy. All of this is so easy if you can get out of your own way and just follow the steps. And yes, there are many, many steps that people talk about, and they are contradictory. But you got to complete one course from one guy from beginning to end, or one woman for that example. So if I ain't the guy, then go find somebody else. Just make sure you get something complete. I would recommend Memory Craft from Lynn Kelly. Great book. But it's only great if you put it into action and actually do some stuff with it. Very, very important. Very important. Kota says, how much time will it take to be perfect? Wrong question. There is no perfect. It's a good question, though. Don't take that heavily critically sounding statement the wrong way. It's a good question, but it's not the right question. What would it be to be perfect? What is the image in your mind of perfection, right? Figure that out first. Describe this special perfection. It's not clear to me that anything other than the present moment is perfect. The present moment is so perfect in every way for most of us, most of the time. Peggy says, have 2 concentric circles of your clock. One goes from 0 to 12, and the second circle goes from 13 to 24. Use military time for all 24 hours in the day. I'd love to see if you do that. I'd love to see that, Peggy. Great. It sounds like a great suggestion, but I'd like to see how it works out in practice. But yeah, awesome. Thank you. Amjad is from Pakistan. My question is, how many memory palaces did you use for your PhD? That's not entirely known to me, but I think it was around 30 at that particular time, because I had the alphabet figured out, and then I had a bunch of others that actually were in use, but there were more that I created. But in any case, it's not really an answerable question, because the reality is so much of the information that one produces is a result of having used memory palaces, but you don't necessarily use the memory palace in the moment. So the better question is about how many did you create and use, as you did it, as opposed to for it. And now there's just, you can't stop me from creating them. I'm creating them all the time. And I really don't know. When Nelson Dellis was on, he's a multi-time USA memory champ. He didn't really have a direct number either of how many that he had. And I don't think anybody serious about the art would ever be able to give you that direct number, because it's just not even really the interesting question. The interesting question is, are you creating memory palaces all the time? Have you developed it? Have you developed the practice to such an extent that it's entered your procedural memory so that you just do it automatically on autopilot? So Peggy asks, what even is IQ? Well, it's the intelligence quotient, right? So we're already in trouble when we talk about intelligence, because there's more than one intelligence. There's multiple intelligences. Now, some people will say, oh, no, there isn't, and they will go on and on and on and on. But there seems to me just an obvious level at which there are multiple intelligences. And apparently, these tests do test for some of the multiple intelligences. But if I were the boss of the world, all intelligence means is the ability to set and accomplish goals. End of story. There's nothing more to it than that. And so what that means is your IQ is irrelevant, because there's all kinds of people who have on paper a low IQ but are tremendously skilled at setting and accomplishing goals. And one of the problems with that definition is that some people are very, very good at setting and accomplishing goals that are destructive, but nonetheless, they are using intelligence to do so. So then we have to pop in something like, what is the ideal or the moral or ethic element of the goals that they're creating and accomplishing? Do they have that? Well, there is, emotional intelligence. There might be some sort of moral intelligence and so forth, but are they switched on to it? So there are a lot of people who have very high IQs who obviously aren't switched on to those things. So what use is the IQ test? If you can't find them and somehow stop them from whatever it is that they're planning in their evil little minds. I don't know what IQ is. I have a general sense of it. There may be some things like crystal intelligence involved and all that kind of stuff versus fluid intelligence and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a goal. And I don't think that the question of how can I improve my IQ or how can I increase my IQ is really switched on to something more like, how can I learn how to use memory techniques to learn more and remember more and to have more fun and to accomplish my goals in a higher level, goals that allow me to serve better in the world, to help both my immediate family and everybody else on the planet, even if I can only just get started with me. That, to me, is the right question to ask. And this worldly concern with IQ and some number that people are going to assign to you because they have some tests that they came up with. And if you needed a high IQ for your job and you really did need to increase it, then I guess you would need to practice passing IQ exams. So dive in and practice passing IQ exams, and I'm sure memory techniques could help you. So that still just gets us back to, do we set goals that enable us to learn and master memory techniques? I'm not getting around that. That's what I suggest you do. Memory training. Beautiful stuff. Amin said, do you use the memory palace more than one time? Is it relevant? Yes, you can reuse the memory palace more than once. I do it often for particular things like memorizing cards, compounding for some language learning activities, but you would want to go and search up on YouTube here my definitive guide to reusing a memory palace. Make sure you don't create the ugly sister effect, which many people do when they're reusing memory palaces, and just give it a try. Make sure that you're using normal memory palaces first, quote unquote normal, and get good at that before you worry about reusing them. But there's a whole other world of exploration and discovery and learning and practice, which is the exploration and learning and practice of the reuse of memory palaces. And the world there really is your oyster if you want to dive in and learn all about that. And I welcome you to it, but I would suggest that you make sure that you've escaped the tyranny of your memory first, and that you actually can use a normal memory palace in a normal way. So if you needed a goal, you needed someone to set something down for you. Oh, and I might overwhelm some people, but let's just pick one. Create a memory palace as I teach, which is 26, and then memorize some number within them that works for you, maybe one in each one, which would be 26 pieces of information, or 10 in each one, and that'd be 260. It's very easy. I think you're actually making it harder for yourself if you go less, but I don't know that for sure. So dive in and give it a try. All right. So are there any more questions about the mind mapping that came up, or can we call it a day? I will stick around just for a second. Type if you got any last things you want to say. Otherwise, we are gone into the great memory palace of whatever we're going to do. What am I going to do? I'm going to finish as much as I can of the new course I'm working on here, and have a nice lunch, and then prepare more around the tyranny of memory experience for you all. And we've got more podcasts coming out soon. We got Lev Golden Touch coming out in a couple of weeks, I guess, and lots of things. So Kota asks, when did I start using these techniques? It was around about 2003, 2004. Very long ago now, actually, relatively speaking. Also very not that deep into the past, but quite some time ago. And yeah, there's a story about that. Everything is typed out. Oh, you want me to do some math? What age was I? I don't know what age I was in 2004, and I don't actually, not sure that it's relevant, but you could do the math if you wanted. Let's see. Do I think that different languages have different effect on creativity? Different languages. To be honest, how could it not? And given that it almost certainly does, why does it matter? Let me know more about what you're thinking. That would be interesting. Let's see. Chrome Woman Walking says, do another juggling video, and I want to read the new book. Oh, great. So what would you like to see in another juggling video? Let me know what I should juggle with next. And about the new book, it's coming, but there's some things that are just bothering me about it. So I need to get those resolved. And so it's done. I thought I would give out some reader copies, but not until that I'm totally settled with it. And I still need to put all the photographs in. The photographs are taken now, but it's going to take the time that it is. I apologize that I mentioned it too early. So that may be getting hopes up. But while I wait to sort it out, we have new things, fun things for people, such as the tyranny of your memory and a new course that I'm shooting now. Pat says, thanks. Interesting phrase you used a little back, by the same token. Yeah, I'm glad you like that. It's very common in where I come from, but might not be that common in other places. Reclaiming Life is in the house, in the Memory Palace. Just caught the last few minutes of this live stream, visiting in South Carolina, but wanted to give you a thumbs up. Thanks for that. Good to see you. Appreciate the thumbs. And yeah, wonderful. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And Dr. Shirag is in the house. Good to see you, man. Wonderful. So the basics for those of us only juggling 2 balls. Okay, well, that video does exist, where I believe I break it down to just 2 balls, but if we need to do another one, let me put it on the to-do list and see what we can do. There might be actually some interesting exercises, 2-ball exercises with recitation and so forth. So thank you for suggesting it. We'll see what we can come up with. Ahmed says, can you explain about linking and imagination? Sure, but give me some more. What about it? Let me know. And do go as quickly as you can in your typing. What is it you would like to know about linking and imagination? If you ask general questions, you just get general answers that are just arrows shot into the world without a target. Let's have something more specific. Just generally, I would say that imagination is not necessarily what people think in terms of memory techniques. A lot of people think that, you have to be creative and generate all this stuff. Well, you are creative already. The fact that you can read a book, you can watch a movie, these are all tapping into your ability to be creative. You're walking to the fridge is an act of creativity. And it's very, very important that you understand that creativity is something different than what a lot of people think it is. So you're creative right now. You're active. You're listening to my words, and your body is creating this image of me. If you're watching me, or your ears are creating the image of the sound of what's going on, the auditory image, and you're creating all of that stuff. So when you want to use linking in your imagination, all you're doing is just harnessing what's already in your brain, and you're placing it in space in a memory palace, and then you're weaving it together with whatever it is you don't know that you want to memorize. And the more you study these techniques, the more you can dig into the different little nooks and crannies, just like a sculptor knows, if I pound here, then I'm going to get this effect. And if I pound there, I'm going to get this effect. And you just continue to study these techniques, and then you begin to realize, oh my goodness, I have magic. I have such powers in my head. And you just can weave or sculpt or craft inside of a memory palace using what was already there, always already there. And your seeking ends, although I really, really do suggest you continue to study the techniques, because you still don't know what you don't know, which is why I continue to study them, which is very important. So, Reclaiming Life suggests to Crone Woman you can learn to do 2 balls with each hand individually, practicing one hand at a time, which will eventually allow you to do 4 balls at once. All right. Ahmed says, you're preparing for a PhD. How did you link in the 30 memory palaces? How did you do linking in the 30 memory palaces? So the memory palace is the linking device. I don't do any linking in there. If you build a memory palace well, it is the linking device. It does the linking for you. And then if you create magnetic imagery in a way that is well situated inside of the memory palace, then there may be links in between there, but you want to have a flow. You want your images to take on a vignette. I don't like the thing of stories. They're not stories. They're if this, then that kind of sequences that play out in order to get you through what it is you're trying to memorize. And then you do recall rehearsal to get it into long-term memory, so you don't need the device anymore. And that's the best, goodest, most phenomenal thing. And it's just the rules of memory accelerated. You're speeding up what you will do even to learn anything at some level like that in a much faster space of time and space of space, so to speak. So if you think of some of the things I memorized, like Aristotle's levels of friendship. So, there's the friendship of pleasure, the friendship of utility, the friendship of virtue, for example. And, this needed to be figured out and needed to think about some of the different ways in which pleasure, for example, works out. So he's talking about how friendships of pleasure will often happen at a younger age. So need an image that suggests younger, and then that needs to be sequentially laid out in a memory palace, which is for Aristotle, for the Nicomachean Ethics, and have that laid out. And so there's one thing that gets encoded there, and it's not really, there's no need for it to link, because the memory palace links it together, right? And then if you think about friendship of utility, well, what's that? Well, that's often either people who are engaged in some sort of similar labor together, who have friendships because of their proximity, and proxemics begins to play a real role in there. There's a number of levels of proxemics to memorize. And so that gets all laid out. And then you get into, something like the friendship of virtue. And then there's a number of things in there. And it's just the Memory Palace links it for you, provided you created the Memory Palace to do that. So if you don't have the course, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT and grab it so that you can do this. The how I did this is all there for you, ready to go. So I hope that you will avail yourself of it and give it its due and complete it from beginning to end and make your own memory palaces and just dive in and start using them to memorize, because that's really the way that it's going to happen one way or another, if it's going to happen at all. It's very, very important to actually do. And not get caught up in the terminology, because it's not really linking. Although that is a word that people use, and probably in their mind it is linking because that's the word they use. So, but I hope that you would see through your own experience that those words are largely insufficient, and they always will be insufficient because there are too many words. There's too many possible ways to describe all of this. The only way that matters is the way that you experience through the experience of training your memory. And if you're locked outside of it, it's probably because the tyranny of your memory has you in its grips. So what you want to do is go over to magneticmemorymethod.com/Tom and make sure you register for how to escape the tyranny of your memory. And I hope that you will and enjoy. All right, everybody. Thank you for the great additional questions. I regret that my lamp fell down there and knocked down another lamp, but it seems like we did okay all around. So I appreciate everybody who was able to join us. Thank you for being active in the chat. If you have any follow-up questions, get in touch. Just, see if you can't answer the question yourself by using search on magneticmemorymethod.com, because almost certainly the answer is there, also on YouTube. And, the world is your oyster. Dive in, complete a training from beginning to end. If you don't know how to complete a memory course, which these days, shockingly, some people don't know that you just click play on a video, take notes, and then keep watching until the end. But I've got some additional tips for you all about that, and you can just search up Magnetic Memory Method and how to complete a memory course, and that'll help you out so that, I don't want to assume that it's self-evident and obvious, because it obviously is not, especially not these days. But there's no end of solutions for getting yourself to do what it is that needs to be done. And I hope that I've been able to help you out today to some extent. And you certainly have been able to help yourselves, especially those who have been active in the chat, asking questions and so forth. I hope I've encouraged those of you who asked particular questions that I may, in the most trivial and pathetic level of reality, seem to have poo-pooed, but in reality was only trying to get you to ask better questions and challenge yourself a little bit more to explore at a higher level that being that you already are, so that you can experience that higher level within and ask better questions. So much of this game is asking better questions, and you'll notice if you go through the replay, a huge part of what we talked about today was making sure that you're asking a hierarchy or a list of questions that challenge the assumptions of what you're reading, not just to be a challenger, but to actually help yourself remember more. And if you could just get into that habit, the memory techniques, you'll still want to use them for sure, but they're way more powerful when you just rig the game in your favor by clicking through those questions. Every time you come across certain statements in text. We gave you an example, so if you missed it, then check out that example watching the replay. I do not think that this, we will polish this series on how to study and remember more, but I do not think we'll be doing it as a free thing. So make sure that you, if you need to go through all of the free training. Yes, I know going through replays where we stop and converse with each other can be tedious to go through as a replay because you're not able to engage and so forth, but there it is nonetheless. And then there will be polished versions for you later, and some of them will be free and some of them won't. So in any case, we'll probably just leave the replays for that one way or the other. And one last time, speaking of free things, please make sure you get Tyranny of Your Memory, how to escape the tyranny of your memory. I know for a fact that I am still in the tyranny of my memory in some areas, but not in the memory training area. And I want to help you escape that, where you may be held back by the tyranny of your memory. So as a last point before we go, there's something called the primacy effect, and there's procedural memory that may have you so trapped in things that you can't escape. And it's not necessarily that you remember that you're in the trap, but it is part of the memory processes that has you in its grip, including something that's called sunk cost fallacy. And so, tyranny of your memory, how to escape the tyranny of your memory, is devoted to helping you get out of those prisons so that you can move forward and get this stuff done, because this is no more than a weekend of activity and training, so you're free to use memory techniques for the rest of your life. And that's at magneticmemorymethod.com/Tom. I will be releasing the first in the training sequence on August 23rd, and you won't want to miss this one. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hockey, for your wishes there, and I wish you enjoy your day as well. And until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
384626 4338 3279 5028 84 1971 69 399375.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I've taken a few courses by Anthony Metivier, but I felt that the experience of doing it today live was the biggest advantage. Anthony has a gift in simplifying complex concepts, and I feel that I've really come away today with practical skills that I can now use effectively. It was great to immerse ourselves in the situation, to be able to apply the time, because when we're at home we may not take the time to do the memory exercises that we were doing today. I felt particularly that the thing that we did at the end of today was something that is totally unique in memory training, which is 3 days of memory, which is how to practice your skills. I've read many memory books and I've never come across a system laid out as to how to practice what you've learned, and this is what I gained today from Anthony's course. So I give it 10 out of 10. Thank you.
5342 1170 679.